Hello, everyone. I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
And today we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 9 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you.
Now, we will be covering these events in these books in a linear fashion, so there will be spoilers for those that have not read the books, but we will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective books. But knowing me and my big mouth, I'm sure at some point in the future to spoil it. But I've been really good so far, so I'm not going to apologize just yet.
A quick warning, today's episode contains descriptions of extreme violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Our show is listener supported, and if you'd like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link at our website at HorseFrogProductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@HorseFrogProductions.com. I have one addition today before we get into the episode. My mom sent me a link to an article about this golf course in Arizona that is being destroyed by a herd of javelinas.
Nice. I'm sorry, not nice.
She was laughing. She said it's like a divers of javelinas destroying this golf course. It's hilarious, man. They're doing a number on the grass over there.
That's a scary thought. Because, man, we talked about hippos, but we kind of discounted like boars and javelinas and things like that. That's some pretty vicious fellows.
Yeah, a boar is particularly concerning. Divers of some type of tusked boar. Yeah, they're very aggressive. I wouldn't want to mess around with them.
That would be bad news, man. Ooh, nice. Good job, Mom Kamraun. Momron?
All right. Chapter 9, Part 1. The chapter begins with the following quote. The Malazan engineers are a unique breed. Cantankerous, foul-mouthed, derisive of authority, secretive, and thick-headed. They are the heartstone of the Malazan army, end quote. And this came from The Imperial Military by Sinjal. In this case, I take engineers to be sappers, and I absolutely agree with this sentiment. We haven't seen enough sapper activity in a military setting to be able to comment on it yet, but I can't wait to get to some of that.
Oh, I can't either. I really can't wait. And I agree with you. I think that this is most definitely what they're talking about. Engineer just sounds so much more dignified than sapper.
I guess technically speaking, the official title is an engineer. They do a lot of undermining of ramparts and digging ditches and stuff like that.
Dude, I got a quick question for us now. Did the U.S. Corps of Engineers start off like that too? Did they do some sapping?
I don't know. I have to look into it.
I bet they were consulted about some sapping. About where to do it, you know? It's like, where would you hit this place? Get the engineer boys in there, go, I'd hit it here, here, and here, and here. You'll take the thing right down.
Like the Normandy invasion?
Yeah.
All those concrete structures they had?
Yeah. We
are taken to Kamraun, and it feels like ages since we've been updated on what he's been up to.
Well, it's been about 3 weeks since we've seen him, right?
Well, yeah, we did take 3 weeks to get through the last chapter.
It was a dense chapter. It was worth it. It was worth every second of it.
Yeah. This one here is shaping up to be quite eventful as well.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. As he descended into the Orbala Odan, Kalam came upon the first signs of the uprising. A train of Malazan refugees had been ambushed while traveling along a dried stream bed. 3 wagons had been set aflame. Kalam sat motionless on his horse, studying the smoke-hazed heaps of charred wood, ash, and bone. After one last glance around in search of Apt, who was nowhere to be seen, though he knew it was close, Kalam dismounted. Tracks revealed that the train's livestock had been led away by the ambushers. The only bodies were those that had been burned in the wagons. His search revealed that there had been survivors. It did not appear that they had been pursued, but Kalam well knew that there was little chance of salvation out on the Odan. The town of Orbal was 5, perhaps 6 days away on foot, and it was likely that it was in rebel hands in any case, since the Malazan detachment there had always been undermanned. He wondered where the refugees had come from. There was little to be found for leagues in any direction. Apt ambled into view from downstream. The beast's wounds had healed, leaving puckered scars on its black hide. 5 days had passed since the divers' attack. And that was the attack from Rilindaris.
Yes.
Also where Kalam broke the tip of one of his blades. which was
That's
quite
right.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
There had been no sign that the divers pursued them, and Kalam hoped that it had taken enough damage to be discouraged from continuing the hunt. Nevertheless, they were being trailed by someone. Kalam felt it in his bones. He was tempted to lay an ambush of his own, but he was one man alone and his pursuers might be many. Moreover, he was uncertain whether Apt would assist his efforts. He suspected not. Kalam's only advantage was the swiftness of his travel. He'd found his horse after the battle without much trouble, and the animal seemed impervious to the rigors of the journey. He'd begun to suspect that an issue of pride had arisen between the stallion and the demon. His mount's bolting from the fight must have stung, and it was as if the horse was determined to recover whatever delusions of dominance he possessed. And this is another magnificent beast, though not as storied as the Graal gelding.
Yeah, this ain't no face biter, but I like that Kalam originally did not like this horse either when he first kind
They
of
were
started
growling
out.
at each other, weren't they?
Yeah, they were like the horse tried to bite him a couple times. So it's got that same kind of spirit. So, but the horse grew on him pretty quickly. But I'm like you. I think it's so funny here that the point of pride with the horse and the demon is just really funny.
Hilarious.
Yes.
Kalam climbed back into the saddle. Apt had found the trail left by the fleeing survivors and was sniffing the air. Kalam said, "Not our problem," and loosened the lone surviving long knife at his belt. He went on, "We've enough troubles of our own, Apt." He nudged his mount and set off in a direction that would take him well around the trail. In deepening dusk, Kalam rode across the plain. Apt vanished within the gloom. Kalam thought, "A demon born in the Shadow Realm. I shouldn't be surprised." The grassland dipped ahead. As he approached, figures rose from cover along the nearest bank of the dried riverbed. Cursing under his breath, Kalam slowed his mount, raising both hands, palms forward. Kalam said, "Mekral, Obari, I ride the whirlwind." A voice said, "Closer then." Hands still raised, Kalam guided his horse forward with his heels and knees. The same voice said, "Mekral." A man stepped clear of the high grasses, a tulwar in one hand. He said, "Come join us in our feast, rider. You have news of the north?" Kalam dismounted and said, "Months old, Obari. I have not spoken aloud in weeks. What stories can you tell me?" The spokesman was simply another bandit who now marauded behind the rebellion's noble mask. He showed Kalam a gapped-toothed smile and said, "Vengeance against the Mesla, Mekral. Sweet as spring water, such vengeance." Kalam asked, "The whirlwind has seen no defeat then? Have the Mesla armies done nothing?" Leading his horse, Kalam strode with the raiders down into the encampment. It had been carelessly laid out, revealing a sloppy mind in command. A large pile of wood was about to be set alight, promising a cooking fire that would be visible across half the Odon. A small herd of oxen had been paddocked inside a makeshift kraal just downwind of the camp. The bandit leader grinned and said, "The Mesla armies have done nothing but die. We have heard that but one remains, far to the southeast, led by a Wiccan with a heart of black, bloodless stone." Kalam grunted. A man passed him a wineskin, and nodding his thanks, he drank deep. The wine was Saltoan, and probably booty from the Mesla, likely the wagons Kalam saw earlier. Same for the oxen. Kalam asked, "Southeast? One of the coastal cities?" The leader said, "Aye, Hisar. But Hisar is now in chemist Rello's hands, as are all the cities but Aaron, and Aaron has the Gistel within. The Wiccan flees overland, chained with refugees by the thousand. They beg his protection even as they lap his blood." Kalam muttered, "Not black-hearted enough, then." The leader said, "True. He should leave them to Rello's armies, but he fears the wrath of the coddled fools commanding in Aaron, not that they'll breathe much longer." Kalam asked, "What is this Wiccan's name?" The leader answered, "Coltane. It is said he is winged like a crow, and finds much to laugh about amidst slaughter. A long, slow death awaits him. This much chemist Rello has promised." Kalam drank again and said, "May the whirlwind reap every reward it's earned." The leader said, "A beautiful horse you have, Mekral." Kalam said, "And loyal. Beware the stranger seeking to ride him." He hoped the warning was not too subtle for the man. The bandit leader shrugged and said, "All things can be tamed." Kalam sighed and set down the wineskin. He asked, "Are you betrayers of the whirlwind?" All motion around him ceased. Off to his left, the fire's bone-dry wood crackled in a rising flame. The leader spread his hands, an offended expression on his face. He said, "A simple compliment, Mekral. How have we earned such suspicion? We are not thieves or murderers, friend. We are believers. Your fine horse is yours, of course, though I have gold. Kalam cut him off. Not for sale, Obari. The leader said, You have not heard my offer. Kalam growled, All 7 holy treasures will not sway me. I enjoy the way the natives of 7 cities will find ways to invoke the 7 in their conversations.
Oh, yes. It's so colorful. I have to find a way to start doing that myself.
Okay.
It can invoke the 7. I'm the 7.
I think we've seen a couple examples in the book so far.
Oh yes, there's lots of it, especially when you get Duiker. He uses some of this stuff, and it seems like you get it with Fiddler and also Kalam. They've been real heavy with it to try and blend in. They keep invoking the 7 anytime they can.
Right. The leader retrieved the wineskin and offered it to Kalam. He said, Then no more shall be said of such matters. Kalam accepted, but did no more than wet his lips. The man continued, These are sad times when trust is a rare thing among fellow soldiers. We all ride in Shaik's name, after all. We share a single hated enemy. Nights such as these, granted peace under the stars amidst this holy war, are cause for celebration and brotherhood, friend. Kalam said, Your words have captured the beauty of our crusade. He thought, Words can so easily glide over mayhem and terror and horror. It's a wonder trust exists at all. The man said, You will now give me your horse and that fine weapon at your belt. Man, this guy is something else.
Oh, good gracious. That guy's hilarious. I feel sorry for him. If he keeps pushing it like this, it's going to be bad news for him.
Yeah. I mean, he's a pretty shady dude anyway, so he'll get what's coming to him. Kalam's laugh was a soft rumble. I count 7 of you, 4 before me, 3 hovering behind. He paused and smiled as he met the bandit leader's fire-lit eyes. He said, It will be a close thing, but I will be certain to kill you first, friend. I love that confidence.
My money's definitely on Kalam on this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that confidence too. That's great. This is, I think, when I first really started smiling. My first read through this guy, I'm just like going, this is going to be great.
The man hesitated, then answered with his own smile. He said, You've no sense of humor. Perhaps it is due to traveling so long without company that you have forgotten the game soldiers play. Have you eaten? We came upon a party of Mesla only this morning, and they were all too generous with their food and possessions. We shall visit them again at dawn. There are women among them. Kalam scowled. He said, And this is your war against the Mesla? You are armed. You are mounted. Why have you not joined the armies of the apocalypse? Chemist Rello needs warriors like you. I ride south to join in the siege of Erin, which must surely come. The man replied, As do we, to walk through Erin's yawning gates, and more. We bring livestock with us, to help feed our brothers in the army. Do you suggest we ignore the rich Mesla we come upon? Kalam said, The Odan will kill them without our help. You have their oxen. He thought, Erin's yawning gates, the gistle within. What does that mean? Gistle, not a familiar word. Not 7 cities. Falari? We've heard that word gistle before. Mm-hmm. When Duiker met Malik Rel earlier in the book, it was noted that he was a gistle priest of the elder god of the seas, Male. So this bandit is referring to the gistle in a way that makes it sound like it's to the army of the apocalypse benefit that the gistle is in Erin.
It's very much so, and that is how I read that. And that's kind of scary that I kind of overlooked that initially. That's a big deal. Yes,
it is. And most people probably forgot about that mention of gistle earlier in the book. Yes. It was only in a couple sentences very early in the book, like page 20 or something.
Yeah, it's way before anything started happening. All this excitement could have washed that from your minds by now. And it does happen with Erikson. You tend to lose stuff because so much goes on.
The bandit leader's expression had cooled in response to Kalam's words. He said, We attacked them at dawn. Do you ride with us, Mekral? Kalam asked, They are south of here? The man said, They are. Less than an hour's ride. Kalam said, Then it is the direction I am already traveling, so I shall join you. The man exclaimed, Excellent. Kalam growled, But there is nothing holy in rape. The man grinned, No, not holy, but just. Man, this guy's quite the slimy character, isn't he?
Oh, I'm ready for Kalam to take care of this fella.
Yeah. They rode in the night. One of the bandits had stayed behind with the oxen and other booty, leaving Kalam riding with a party of 6. All carried short, recurved bows, though not a single quiver held more than 3 arrows, and all with ragged fletching. The weapons would be effective at close range only. Bordu, the bandit leader, told Kalam that the Malazan refugees consisted of 1 man, a Malazan soldier, 2 women, and 2 young boys. He was certain that the soldier had been wounded in the first ambush. Bordu did not expect much of a fight. They would take down the man first. Bordu said, "Then we can play with the women and boys. Perhaps you will change your mind, Mekral." Kalam's only response was a grunt. He knew men such as these. Their courage held so long as they outnumbered their victims. The hollow glory they thirsted for came with overpowering and terrorizing the helpless. Such creatures were common in the world, and a land locked in war left them to run free. The brutal truths behind every just cause. They were given a name in the early tongue. E Petar le Gebran, the vultures of violence. Those are nasty buggers.
Yeah, they're real trash. Just real, slimy guys.
We've seen quite a few of these roving bands of men so far
Yes.
since the apocalypse started, up to all kinds of bad stuff.
Durika's run into him, and Heberick, not Heberick, but Fiddler has run into other, So we've all run, these fellas have run into everyone. They keep running into him.
Ahead of them, hump-shouldered knobs of granite were visible above the grasses. Faint firelight was visible behind one such large outcropping. Kalam shook his head, far too careless in a hostile land. The soldier with them should have known better. Bordu raised a hand, slowing them to a halt about 50 paces from the monolithic outcrop. He whispered, "Keep your eyes from the hearth. Let those fools be cursed with blindness, not us. Now spread out. The Mekral and I will ride around to the other side. Give us 50 breaths, then attack." Kalam's eyes narrowed on the bandit leader. Coming at the camp from the opposite side, he would run an obvious risk of taking an arrow or 3 from these attackers in the melee. He thought, more soldiers' humor, I take it. But Kalam said nothing, pulling away when Bordu did and riding side by side on a route that would circumvent the refugees' camp. Kalam asked, "Your men are skilled with their bows?" Bordu said, "Like vipers, Mekral." Kalam muttered, "With about the same range." Bordu said, "They'll not miss." Kalam responded, "No doubt." Bordu said, "You are afraid, Mekral? You, such a large, dangerous-looking man?" "A warrior without doubt. I am surprised." Kalam said, "I have a bigger surprise," then reached over and slid a blade across Bordu's throat. Blood sprayed. Gurgling, the bandit leader reeled back in his saddle, his head flopping horribly. Kalam really cut him deep there. I'm surprised he was able to, sitting next to him like he is. Normally you would think to get that deep and with the head flopping around, it would take quite a bit of force, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe the blades, maybe it's a little ragged, or maybe it's just he just sliced deep. I mean, because maybe it's his strength too, because Kalam is a strong fella.
Yeah.
So that was just a heck of a vicious knife stroke.
Yeah. Maybe there's a little bit of anger behind it too.
Probably so, because he's not pleased with these fellows being rapists, and I'm assuming, going to take advantage of these boys if they capture. So
Kalam sheathed his knife. He rode closer in time to prop the man back up in his saddle and hold him balanced there, one hand to Bordu's back. He said, "Ride with me a while longer, and may the 7 holies flay your treacherous soul." He thought, "As they will mine when the time comes." Why do you think Kalam feels his soul will be flayed? Is it the bad stuff that he's had to do over the years?
That's what I would assume. I know for him, he's a bit of a legend, and we haven't seen half of anything yet from this man. I'm assuming that he's done so much to become this legend before we're ever introduced to him. So I think he's killed a lot of people and has a lot of soldiers. Killing soldiers is one thing. That's not necessarily murder, but killing he's an assassin. So he's killed a bunch of people that probably necessarily didn't have it coming.
Mm-hmm.
That may weigh on him.
I agree. The glimmering firelight lay ahead. Distant shouts announced the bandits' charge. Horse hooves thumped the hard ground. Kalam tapped his mount into a canter. Bordu's horse matched the pace. The bandit leader's body weaving, his head now rolling almost on his side, ear against one shoulder. They reached the hill slope, which was gentler on this side and mostly unobstructed. The attackers were visible now, riding into the shell of firelight, arrows zinging to thud into the blanket-wrapped figures around the hearth. From the sound those arrows made, Kalam knew instantly that there were no bodies beneath those blankets. The soldier had proved his worth, had laid a trap. Kalam grinned. He pushed Bordu down over the saddle horn and gave the bandit leader's horse a slap on the rump. It charged into the light. Kalam quickly checked his own mount's canter, slipped to the ground still in the darkness beyond the firelight, and padded forward noiselessly. The crisp snap of a crossbow sounded. One of the bandits pitched back in his saddle and tumbled to the ground. The 4 others had pulled up, clearly confused. Something like a small bag flew into the hearth, landing with a spray of sparks. A moment later, the night was lit up in a cascading flame, and the 4 bandits were clearly outlined. The crossbow loosed again. A bandit shrieked, arching to reach for the quarrel embedded in his back. A moment later, he groaned, sagging as his horse stepped in a confused circle. Kalam had escaped exposure in the burst of light, but his night vision was gone. Swearing under his breath, he edged forward, long knife in his right hand, double-edged dagger in his left. He heard another rider coming in hard from one side. Both bandits wheeled their mounts to meet the charge. The horse appeared, slowing from what had been a bolt. There was no one in the saddle. The flare-up from the hearth was ebbing. His nerves suddenly tingling, Kalam stopped and crouched down. He watched as the riderless horse trotted aimlessly to the right of the bandits, the animal moving closer to come alongside one of the attackers. In a fluid, graceful motion, the rider swung into view, a woman who had been crouching down out of sight over one stirrup, twisting to chop down at the nearest bandit with a butcher's cleaver. The huge blade connected with the man's neck and cut through to lodge in his vertebra. Dang! She used a butcher's cleaver on this guy?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, I've always imagined that they would make a good weapon. You get the little hatchet/machete kind of thing going on there. It's got some heft to it, but not as long as a machete. But I think the only problem would be getting it stuck in somebody's vertebrae.
Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Quite the brutal weapon.
Yes.
Then the woman had both feet on the saddle. Even as the bandit toppled, she stepped onto his horse, taking the lance from the saddle holster and jabbing it like a spear at the second bandit. The man cursed and reacted with a warrior's training. Instead of leaning back in what would have been a hopeless effort to avoid the lance head flashing at his chest, he drove both heels into his horse, twisting to let the lance slip past. His mount rammed the other horse, chest to flank. With a startled yelp, the woman lost her balance and fell heavily to the ground. The bandit leapt from the saddle and unsheathed his tulwar. Kalam's dagger took him in the throat 3 paces from the dazed woman. Spitting in fury, hands clutching his neck, the bandit fell to his knees. Kalam approached to deliver a killing thrust. Behind Kalam, a voice snapped, "Stand still. Got a quarrel trained on you. Drop that lizard sticker, now!" Kalam shrugged and let the weapon fall from his hand. He said, "I'm Second Army, One Arm's host." The voice said, "Is 1,500 leagues away." The woman regained the breath that had been driven from her lungs. She rose to her hands and knees, long black hair hanging down over her face. The last bandit finished dying with a faint, wet gurgle. The voice behind Kalam said, "You're 7 cities." Kalam said, "I, yet a soldier of the Empire. Listen, work it out. I rode up from the other side with the bandit's leader. He was dead before his horse carried him into your camp." The voice said, "So why does a soldier wear a talaba and no colors and ride alone? Desertion. And that's a death sentence." Kalam hissed in exasperation. "And clearly you chose to protect your family instead of whatever company you're attached to. By imperial military law, that counts as desertion, soldier." As he spoke, the Malazan stepped around, his crossbow still trained on Kalam. Kalam saw a man half dead on his feet. Short and wide, he wore the tattered remnants of an outpost detachment uniform. Light gray leather jerkin, dark gray surcoat. His face was covered in a network of scratches, as were his hands and forearms. A deep wound marred his bristly chin, and the helm shadowing his eyes was dented. The clasp of his surcoat ranked him as captain. Kalam's eyes widened upon seeing that. He said, "Though a captain deserting is a rare thing." The woman said, "He didn't desert." She was now fully recovered and sorted through the weapons of the dead bandits. She found a lightweight tulwar and tested his balance with a few swings. In the firelight, Kalam could see she was attractive, medium-boned, her hair streaked with iron. Her eyes were a startling light gray. She collected a belted sword hoop and strapped it on. When I hear someone's size described as medium-boned, it reminds me of the first time Clarice met with Hannibal in Silence of the Lambs. He said something about her having nutrition growing up that gave her some length of bone. It's not something I hear used very often.
No. All I think of is big boned from Eric Cartman in South Park. It's like, I'm not fat, I'm big boned.
The captain said, "We rode out of Orbal," with pain evident in his voice. He went on, "A whole company escorting out refugees, our families, ran smack into a hood-damned army on the march south." The woman said, "We're all that's left," and turned to gesture into the darkness. Another woman, a younger, thinner version of the other one, and 2 children stepped cautiously into the light, then rushed to the captain's side. The man continued to aim an unsteady crossbow at Kalam. He said, "Selv, my wife." As he gestured to the woman now at his side, he continued, "Our children, there. And Selv's sister Minala. That's us. Now let's hear your story." Kalam said, "Corporal Kalam, 9th Squad, Bridge Burners. Now you know why I'm out of uniform, sir." The man grinned and said, "You've been outlawed. So why aren't you marching with Dujek, unless you've returned to your homeland to join the whirlwind?" Minala asked, "Is that your horse?" Kalam turned to see his mount step casually into the camp. He said, "Aye." She said, "You know your horses." Kalam said, "It cost me a virgin's ransom. I figure if something's expensive, it's probably good, and that's how much I know horses." The captain muttered, "You still haven't explained why you're here." Kalam could see he was relaxing his guard. He said, "Smelled the uprising in the wind. The empire brought peace to 7 cities. Shaikh wants a return to the old days. Tyrants, border wars, and slaughter. I ride for Aaron. That's where the punitive force will land. And if I'm lucky, I can slip myself in, maybe as a guide." The captain said, "You'll ride with us then, Corporal. If you're truly a bridge burner, you'll know how to soldier. And if that's what you show me on the way to Aaron, I'll see you rejoin the Imperial ranks without fuss." Kalam nodded and asked, "Can I retrieve my weapons now, Captain?" The man said, "Go ahead." Kalam crouched down, reached for his long knife, then paused. He said, "Oh, one thing, Captain." The man had sagged against his wife. He swung bleary eyes on Kalam and said, "What?" Kalam said, "Better my name should change. I mean, officially. I wouldn't welcome the gallows if I'm marked in Aaron. Granted, Kalam is common enough, but there's always the chance I'd be recognized." The captain said, "You're that Kalam? You said the 9th, didn't you? Hood's breath." Suddenly the man's knees buckled. With a soft whimper, his wife eased him down to the ground, looked up at her sister with frightened eyes, then over at Kalam. Kalam grinned and said, "Relax, lass. I'm back in the army now." The 2 boys, one about 7 and the other 4, moved with exaggerated caution toward the captain and his wife. She saw them and opened her arms. They rushed to her embrace. Minala said, "He was trampled. One of the bandits dragged him behind his horse, 60 paces before he cut himself free." Ouch. That's from experience.
Ouch. You've been drugged? Oh,
Yeah, that when I got that
that's right. That's right.
skull fracture. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, goodness. I
Got
forget
knocked
that
out and everything.
Yeah. Woof. That's awful. I forget that we meet these people this soon. Manala and Keneb and his wife. I'm like, well, that's kind of quick.
Yes.
I don't know why I forget about that. There's so much going on.
Yeah, Manala's a pretty interesting character. I don't know
Yes.
what it specifically is about her. Maybe it's just that she doesn't seem to take no for an answer.
Yeah. And she seems to know how to handle herself pretty well. I kind of dig that too, man. I kind of dig that.
Very
I'm with
proficient.
Kalam. Yes. Well, I appreciate a very efficient and proficient woman.
Kalam thought women who lived with garrisons were either harlots or wives. There was little doubt which one Minala had been. Kalam asked, "Your husband was in the company as well?" She said, "He commanded it, but he's dead." It could have been a statement about the weather for all the emotion expressed, and Kalam sensed the rigid control that held the woman. He asked, "And the captain's your brother-in-law?" Minala said, "His name is Keneb. You've met my sister Selv. The older boy is Kessin, the younger Vaneb." Kalam asked, "You're from Quan?" She said, "Long ago." Kalam thought, not the talkative type. He glanced over at Keneb and asked, "Will he live?" Minala said, "I don't know. He has dizzy spells, blackouts." Kalam asked, "Sagging face, slurred words?" Minala answered, "No." Kalam went to his horse and gathered up the reins. Minala demanded, "Where are you going?" Kalam said, "There's one bandit standing guard over food, water, and horses. We need all 3. Minala said, "Then we all go." Kalam started to argue, but Minala raised a hand. She said, "Think, Corporal. We have the bandits' horses. We can ride, all of us. The boys sat in saddles before they could walk. And who guards us when you're gone? What happens if you get wounded fighting that last bandit?" She spun to her sister and said, "We'll get Keneb over a saddle, Selv. Agreed?" Selv nodded. Kalam sighed, "But leave the guard to me." Minala said, "We will. It seems you've a reputation," by Keneb's reaction. Kalam asked, "Fame or notoriety?" Minala said, "I expect he'll say more when he comes around." Kalam thought, "I hope not. The less they know about me, the better."
I think that kind of goes back to where he says something about his soul being cursed. You know, The less they know about me, the better. He's probably done some pretty stuff that's impressive and helped the Malazans, but also some pretty dark deeds.
Yeah, I agree. The sun was still an hour from rising when Kalam raised a hand to bring the party to a halt. He hissed, "That old riverbed," and gestured 1,000 paces ahead. He said, "All of you wait here. I won't be long." Kalam removed the best of the bandits' recurve bows from its saddle sheath and selected 2 of the least tattered arrows. He told Manala, "Load that crossbow in case something goes wrong." She asked, "How will I know?" Kalam shrugged and said, "In your gut." He glanced at Keneb. The captain was laid over a saddle, still unconscious. That wasn't good. Head injuries were always unpredictable. Manala quietly said, "He's still breathing." Kalam grunted, then set off at a dog trot across the plain. He saw the glow of the campfire well before he reached the high grass lining the bank. Still careless, a good sign. The voices he could hear weren't. He dropped down and slid forward through the dew-wet grass on his stomach. Another party of raiders had arrived, bearing gifts. Kalam saw the motionless, sprawled bodies of 5 women flung down around the camp. All had been savaged, then murdered. Think about Keneb's kids witnessing all this horror. I mean, not just them, any of the children that are on the wrong side of this war. That's some
Yeah.
pretty bad stuff for them to see.
Yeah, I can't imagine this pertains because we have a real world situation always. There's always wars going on, but where kids are always caught in the middle of this stuff, and they're poor, and I feel bad for these kids that see stuff like this. They got no idea what's going on. They're just kind of caught up in it, and that's awful. But the stuff done to their minds has got to just be, lifelong. I know.
It'll affect them deeply.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to Bordu's guard, there were 7 others, all sitting around the fire, all well armed and armored in boiled leather. Bordu's guard was speaking a dozen words for every breath. "Won't tire the horses, so the prisoners will walk. 2 women, 2 boys. Like I said, Bordu plans these things. And a horse worthy of a prince, you'll see soon enough." One of the newcomers growled, "Bordu will gift the horse." Kalam thought, not a question. Bordu's guard said, "Of course he will. And a boy, too. Bordu is a generous commander, sir. Very generous." Kalam thought, "Sir, true soldiers of the whirlwind, then." Kalam edged back, then hesitated. A moment later, his eyes came to rest again on the murdered women. He breathed a silent curse. A soft clack sounded almost at his shoulder. Kalam went rigid, then slowly turned his head. Abt crouched beside him, head ducked low, a long thread of drool hanging from its jaws. It blinked knowingly. Kalam whispered, "This time, then, or come to watch?" Abt gave nothing away, naturally. Kalam knocked the better of the 2 arrows, licked his fingers, and ran them along the feather guides. There was little gain in elaborate planning. He had 8 men to kill. There's no time like the present.
Right. So pragmatic.
Yeah, I like how he just jumps right into it, instead of waiting around agonizing over it.
I love that idea because I think, I'm not sure if he reveals it, but it's kind of like, too much planning in something like this sometimes costs you. As far as just sometimes just the surprise and just being bold takes care of business sometimes.
Yes. Still concealed by the high grass, Kalam rose into a crouch and drew the bowstring as he took a deep breath. He held both for a long moment. It was the shot he needed. The arrow entered the troop commander's left eye and went straight through to the back of the skull, the iron point making a solid crunching sound as it drove into the bone. The man's head snapped back. His helmet flew from his head. Kalam drew for his second shot even as the body rocked, then fell forward from the waist. He chose the man fastest to react, a big warrior with his back to the assassin. The arrow went high, betrayed by a warped shaft. Sinking into the warrior's right shoulder, it was deflected off the blade and up under the rim of his helmet. Kalam's luck held as the man pitched forward onto the fire, instantly dead. Sparks rose as the body swallowed up the flames. Darkness swept down like a cloak. Kalam dropped the bow and closed swiftly on the shouting, frightened men. A brace of knives in his right hand, Kalam selected his targets. His left hand was a blur as he threw the first knife. A warrior screamed. Another caught sight of him. Kalam unsheathed his long knife and close-worked dagger. A tulwar flashed at his head. He ducked, stepped close, and stabbed the man under the chin. With no solid bone to bite down on the dagger blade, he was instantly able to withdraw it, in time to parry a lance thrust, take another step, and stab the long knife's point into the man's throat. A tulwar skidded across his shoulders, the blow too wild to penetrate the chain under Kalam's talaba. He spun, a backhand slice which opened the attacker's cheek and nose. The man reeled. Kalam kicked him away. The 3 warriors still prepared to fight, and Bordu's guard all backed off to regroup. Their reaction made it clear that they imagined that a whole squad had attacked them. Kalam took advantage of their frantic search of the shadows to finish off the man whose face he'd cut. One of the warriors hissed, "Spread out! Jellem, Hanor, get the crossbows!" Waiting for that was suicide. Kalam rushed the man who'd taken command. He backed off desperately, the tulwar in his hand twitching in every direction as he tried to follow Kalam's intricate feints, hoping to catch the one feint that was in fact the genuine attack. Then instinct made the man abandon the effort and lash out in a counterattack, which Kalam had been waiting for. He intercepted the downward swing at the man's wrist with the point of his dagger. Spitting his arm on the blade, the warrior screamed in pain. His weapon flew from a spasming hand. Kalam thrust the long knife into the man's chest, ducked, and spun to evade an attack from Bordu's guard. The move was a surprise, since Kalam had not expected to find much courage in the man. He came very close to dying then. Straightening inside the guard's reach was all that saved him. Kalam drove his dagger low, stabbing just under the man's belt buckle. Hot fluid gushed over Kalam's forearm. The guard shrieked and doubled over, trapping both knife and the hand gripping it. Kalam surrendered the weapon and stepped around the guard. That stab right there is particularly bad.
Yes.
In the groin area, you're
this
done.
This is bad, MK.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a nasty one.
The remaining two warriors crouched 20 feet away as they loaded their crossbows. The weapons were Malazan, assault issue, and both men revealed a fatal lack of familiarity with the loading mechanisms. Kalam himself could ready such a crossbow in 4 seconds. After practicing thousands of times, I'm sure.
Yes.
He closed with them in a flash. One still tried to lock the crank, his frantic terror undoing his efforts as the quarrel jumped from its slot and fell to the ground. The other man tossed his crossbow down with a snarl and retrieved his tulwar in time to meet Kalam's charge. He had advantage in both the reach and weight of his weapon, yet neither availed him when a sudden loss of courage froze him in his tracks. He said please as Kalam batted the tulwar aside and cross-swung his long knife's razor-sharp edge, opening the warrior's throat. The swing continued, spinning to transform into a sideways thrust that pierced the other man's chest, through boiled leather, skin, between ribs, and into the lung. The warrior choked, then crumpled. Kalam finished him with another thrust. Behind the moans of Bordu's guard lay silence. From a copse of low trees 30 paces down the riverbed came the first peeps of birds awakening to dawn. Kalam dropped to one knee, sucking in lungfuls of sweet, cool air. And what an amazing fighter he is. That was quite the action sequence there.
Amazing action sequence. And this truly great work, Kalam. Awesome.
8-on-1?
Yes. And I think this is where I truly fell in love with him as a character. Oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. He killed a couple other ones earlier, but now it's just and I came back and finished up.
We did see that rooftop fight in Gardens of the Moon, which was legendary.
Absolutely.
But he did have Quick Ben's help in that one, and it was less people involved immediately. I think he was fighting like 3 people at once, something like that.
But he was fighting Tist Andy.
Right.
He messed some of them boys up bad.
Yeah, killed one of them, crushed one's neck, broke one's jaw.
Oh, my word. What a beast of a man. That speaks to his strength as well. So, because remember when I forgot he was hanging one-armed off that roof in Gardens of the Moon.
Yes, and then he grabbed one guy by the neck and then brought his knee up into his face.
Yes. It's just like, wow.
Really impressive.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised, but it's nice to see him cut loose. This is one of the first really cut loose you see him do it.
Kalam heard a horse descend the south bank and turned to see Minala. The crossbow in her hands pointed from one corpse to the next as she checked the clearing. Then she visibly relaxed. Fixing Kalam with wide eyes, she said, "I count 8. Still struggling for breath, Kalam nodded. He reached out and cleaned his long knife's blade and hilt on his last victim's talaba, then checked the weapon's edge before sheathing it. Bordu's guard finally fell silent. Minala repeated, 8. Kalam asked, "How's the captain?" Minala said, "Awake, groggy, maybe fevered." Kalam said, "There's another clearing about 40 paces east of here. I suggest we camp there for the day. I need some sleep." Minala said, "Yes." Kalam said, "We need to strip this camp, the bodies." Minala said, "Leave that to Selv and me. We don't shock easily anymore." With a grunt, Kalam straightened and went to retrieve his other weapons. Minala watched him. She said, "There were 2 others." Kalam paused over a body and looked up. He asked, "What?" Minala said, "Guarding the horses. They look..." She hesitated, then continued grimly. They were torn to pieces, big chunks missing, bite marks. Kalam voiced a second grunt, then rose slowly. He muttered, I hadn't had much to eat lately. Minala said, maybe a plains bear, the big brown kind, took advantage of the ruckus to ambush the 2 guards. Did you hear the horses screaming? Kalam said, maybe. He studied her face, wondering what was going on behind those almost silver eyes. She said, I didn't, but there were plenty of screams, and sound does jump around in riverbeds like these. Anyway, it'll do as an explanation, don't you think? Kalam said, just might. Minala said, good. I'll ride back for the others now. I won't be long. She swung her mount around without using the reins, since she still held the crossbow in her hands. Kalam wasn't sure how she managed it. He recalled her crouch over one stirrup hours earlier, her dance across the saddles. He thought, this woman can sit a horse. And she did also comment on his choice of horses after she saw his stallion.
Right? Yeah, she did.
So she must have had some significant amount of experience with horses.
Yes. Well, her husband was the commander of the force where they lived, where they were ran out of. So I'm assuming maybe she took advantage of their position and took some training or something.
I can't remember if we get to find out later.
Yeah.
I think it might be mentioned later in the book. She might talk about it. Where she
probably so. I'm hoping so.
As Minala rode back up the bank, Kalam surveyed the grisly camp. He breathed, Hood, I need a rest. All right, we're going to stop there for this week, and we'll finish out the chapter next week. We'll pick up where we left off.
Good chapter.
For standout moments?
Well, I liked the horse's point of pride with Apt. He's still stung. Great. He's stung to the core over running away during the previous encounter with the divers.
Good call on that one. That is pretty epic.
It is great, dude. Oh.
The reveal that the forces of the apocalypse think that the Gistal priest in Aaron is to their benefit, that's pretty important information.
That's a big reveal, and I'm really disheartened by this reveal.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. The conversation between Kalam and the bandit leader, particularly the back and forth about the horse, was kind of funny. Oh. There's a little bit of that Middle Eastern bartering stuff going on.
Yes, I like I said, he's real cool, but he's like, you're gonna have to give it to me now. And then Kalam's like, I'll kill you first. Basically, he's like, you got a sense of I'm just joking, man. It's like, no, you're not joking. You announced who you were pretty quick.
Yeah. The bandits failed assault on the Malazan camp, and Minala using a butcher's cleaver to take out one of the bandits. That was pretty neat. All of the action sequences, really, in this section that we covered today, were good.
It was, but I'm like you. I think what I like about Minala is that, yes, she's not military. She may be married to the military and have picked up some things, but she's a very strong woman. I like how she's jumped up into it and has become quite a fighter. Is quite a fighter in her own right.
We'll find out more about her, but the first impression of her is pretty interesting.
Yes,
she's very emotionally contained. Her sister's looking to her as somebody that she feels can protect her.
Yeah.
She's obviously really proficient with using weapons and riding horses too.
Yeah. So a very good addition to the party, shall we say.
Yeah.
I like how the name Kalam makes Keneb faint when he hears it.
Oh yeah.
I know it's not really that, but
it's not directly, but it is like immediately before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of it, though. It's like, wow, it's that Kalam. Holy moly.
That Kalam?
Yeah. I can take a rest now. This guy's got it covered while I take a nap.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, and then finally, Kalam's assault on the men in Bordu's camp.
Oh, yes.
What an amazing action sequence.
I think the most painful thing for me is the idea of catching that knife in the forearm, pinning your arm in the forearm.
Worse than the groin?
They're both bad. The groin is awful.
They are.
But the guy gets to live with that agony for a second before he gets his throat cut. So it's like, ow, that's really painful.
Yeah, because that groin one was a slow death.
Yeah, that's true, because it took that guy. He was dying there till the very end, pretty much.
He was, yeah. Yeah, and that conversation between Minala and Kalam about what Apt did was a little bit interesting.
It is funny how he just kind of tries to play it off like I was hungry.
Yeah, but she was like, "Do you think that reason sounds good?" He's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, we'll go with that
I
then."
like how she looks. She knows how to
You
look
know,
to
it's
him for
like-
leadership. He's obviously well. Also, she goes 8. It's 8 guys, man. It's like she's just, yeah, the 8.
yeah,
Oh
and
wow.
repeats it.
So I think I think she feels a little bit better after having run into him now.
Yeah,
Hey, great episode. Really enjoyed the episode, man.
cool. Good job tonight, Billy. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
No, I was just gonna say great episode. Can't wait to finish up the chapter, man. Just great book so far, nonstop.
Oh yeah, next week
Oh,
is got some good stuff in it and some
yes.
kind of emotional stuff too.
Ooh,
All right, everybody. Thanks. We'll see you next week.
great episode. We really enjoyed it tonight, and thanks so much. Have a great week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.